wanna take your place. Yeah, I think we should meet in the middle. I follow you cause you're the light of the day. I need you like you need me, it's so simple. It's so simple.
Welcome back to the Gen X Juggler podcast. I'm so glad you're here. As always, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice in any field, including legal, medical, financial, or mental health. Please consult a qualified professional for advice tailored specifically to you. Do you remember when 50 was old? I sure do. I'm not quite 50. I'll get there in January. But as a friend recently pointed out, I am in my 50th year, so close enough, right? I definitely do not consider myself or my fellow Gen X jugglers to be old by any stretch. But I will acknowledge that we have reached the time of life when we begin to evaluate our lives up to now. What have I done with my life? What do I have to show for it? And most often, what would I go back and do differently if I could? Thanks to the power of marketing, I can't think about the topic of regret without bringing to mind that Milky Way commercial where the tattoo artist gives the big biker dude a tattoo that says, "No regerts." And her only defense is, "Sorry, I was eating a Milky Way." I wish that worked in real life. Unfortunately, there aren't enough Milky Ways in the world to cover all of my regerts. Regret can be useful in some cases, but it can also be futile and even damaging in others. Today, I want to take a look at regret, how to benefit from it, and how to ultimately let it go. I remember toward the end of my senior year of high school, we had a guest speaker come speak to our youth group. His name was Dale. Many of us knew him because he was a counselor every year at church camp. He knew how to connect with kids. He had a big physical presence, but his personality and love for Jesus were even bigger. As he spoke to us that evening on the front lawn of our church, he made a point that has stayed with me all these years later and still applies, though maybe a bit differently. Dale constructed a metaphor, driving the car of life. Most of us had just started driving, so the metaphor was apropos. He pointed out how easy and relaxing it is to drive when you're looking forward and not worried about what's behind you. You can just enjoy the scenery and make sure you're following the signs to get where you need to go. But if you're constantly checking the rear view, you can start to feel anxious, give yourself a headache, and lose focus on where you're going. He was speaking to teenagers, so his emphasis was on driving the car of life in such a way that you know you're doing what's right. So you don't have to look in your rear view to see if the metaphorical red and blues are catching up to you, aka the consequences of your actions. That is still a great lesson at any age, but since we now have a good stretch of the road of life behind us, there can be a temptation to spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror at all of the woulda, coulda, shouldas that line those miles we've already traveled. This can cause us to neglect looking with purpose down the long stretch of road that lies ahead. Unfortunately, we can't change the past, no matter how many times we go over and over it in our minds, seeing it the way we wish it had gone, rather than how it actually did. The truth is, until Elon finally gets around to inventing the Tesla time machine, our options when it comes to addressing the past are limited. I only know that when Elon finally figures that out, my first stop will actually be 50 years in the future to buy a sports almanac. After that, I'll make sure to have a nice sit down with the old me and tell her how to avoid every bad decision that she's about to make. All current evidence points to the fact that Elon did not invent that time machine in time for it to do me any good in the past, present, or future. But here's hoping. Focusing on life's regrets can keep us stuck and make us miserable. Who wants to live like that? I certainly don't, and I don't want that for you either. It makes sense that regrets can cause depression in those who ruminate on them, but why is that? It turns out that when we experience regret, the activity in the reward processing part of our brain decreases, while activity in the part of the brain that generates immediate emotional response to threat increases. Ruminating on regret is a form of self-punishment that physically increases our stress levels to that of an animal who is helpless to avoid the clutches of a predator. To our brains, regret is a predator looking to take us down, and the older we get, the more vulnerable we are to its attack. So what can we do? For starters, we can learn from our mistakes, and therefore avoid making similar mistakes in the future. The best thing about big mistakes is what they teach us, right? That hard-fought wisdom is a huge benefit of making it this far, regrets and all. Also, if there is an opportunity to correct a regret, we can and should do it. It does take a level of bravery and humility to right our wrongs, especially when our wrongs involve others. It can be scary to revisit a bad moment in an effort to correct the past because we don't get to decide how other people react in those moments. And the truth is, we can't really ever correct the past, but we can do the right thing now and going forward. Uncomfortable moments where we face our fears and have those tough conversations are a big part of that. The late, great Rich Mullins, one of my all-time favorite singer-songwriters, wrote about how sometimes life shakes us forward and shakes us free. I love that phrase. Shakes us forward and shakes us free. In this case, being brave enough to risk a difficult moment in the interest of doing the right thing can shake us forward and free from the regret we might otherwise carry for way too long. But what about the regrets that we're powerless to correct without the use of that Tesla time machine? Those are the worst, right? It turns out there are some things we can do to shake free from those as well. One suggestion is to think of what we would say to a friend who is struggling with the same regret. What would we tell them about letting their regret eat away at them? What perspective and words of grace would we offer to ease the mind of a friend? Then offer that same advice, perspective, and grace to ourselves. Sadly, we tend to be kinder to others than we are to ourselves, so this approach can really help. And I would imagine reaching out to a trusted friend who can offer that same kindness would be helpful as well. We can also try shifting our gaze to that which we can control. This is why I like to keep a handwritten journal. As my former English students may remember, I believe that ink is truth serum. If I want to know how I really feel or what I really think, I just start writing and see what flows out of my pen and onto the paper. It's a great way to work out my most complicated thoughts. And using our journals to make lists of what we have to be grateful for in the present is also good for the soul and shifts our focus to the positive. Including lessons learned from past regrets in that list of gratitude is even better. Writing a letter of forgiveness to your younger self and making a list of worthy goals to pursue in the future are a couple more good ways we can use journaling to replace regrets with perspective and purpose. Journaling helps us harness our rogue thoughts and make sense of them so they can be useful and meaningful. And it doesn't have to be proper or pretty. Journaling is heart work, not homework. Obviously, I love a good journal, but honestly, prayer and meditation are the best tools in our arsenal for letting go of what we can't control and finding peace. Understanding that God is bigger than we are and bigger than our circumstances, past or present, takes the pressure off of us to handle everything in our own strength, including forgiveness of others and forgiveness of ourselves. It's funny how the brain works. The things we wish would stick rarely do, but the things we'd love to forget just hang around. For instance, I will never forget the time, more than 30 years ago now, when I made an offhanded comment about how nice it is in the summer months that we have more daylight to get things done in the evening, to my new friend, who had been blind since birth. She very kindly responded with, "Oh, I bet." I immediately felt stupid, like Baby in Dirty Dancing when she says, "I carried a watermelon." While this was certainly not the biggest mistake I ever made, not by a long shot, I tend to be reminded of that and other regrettable moments randomly, so I can just feel like an idiot all over again. But I can't even remember what I'm supposed to do today unless I write it down. I guess you could say our brains have a mind of their own, and it doesn't always work in our favor. Sometimes it's up to us to take action and get our thoughts headed in the right direction. But of course, I do want to say, if you're experiencing deep regret or remorse that's beyond the scope of these simple little self-help tips, there's absolutely no shame in reaching out to a mental health professional for help. I have definitely benefited from that a time or two. These days, we can even connect with mental health professionals from the comfort of our own couch, which makes getting the help we sometimes need easy and convenient. Mental health is just as important as physical health, and one definitely affects the other. In order to live our best lives, we need to cover all the bases: physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. If we do this, I think we stand a better chance of relaxing and enjoying the scenery as we continue down the road of life with significantly fewer regrets. But Elon, if you're listening, I'm ready for that time machine whenever you are. That does it for this episode of the Gen X Juggler podcast. I encourage you to take a little time this week to count your blessings and spend less time looking in the rearview mirror. Let's just enjoy the ride. I look forward to our next time together. Until then, friend, let's keep on juggling.
Gonna take your place.